Hello everyone, and hi Antoine, hi Massifs. Antoine from the channel L'Art de la Voix is joining us in this episode. Before taking us to discover Tatib, the martial art that is still practiced today and dates back to ancient Egypt. If you haven't yet, check out the introduction to ancient Egypt I made. It's important for context. I've put the link in the description. But now I'm going to introduce you to the society of Pharaonic Egypt. It's easy to imagine a pyramidal society, highly hierarchical, divided into layers, with the pharaoh at the top and the peasants at the bottom. And
Actually, that's not the case.
more or less, but not quite. The public wanted to simplify Pharaonic Egypt's society like this, because calling it a pyramidal society is both amusing and revealing. Egyptian society was hierarchical, and understanding it requires considering its pervasive religion. Without going into the details of ancient Egyptian religion, two concepts help illustrate and understand the society of that time. Mahat and Isafet are concepts. Mahat is sometimes personified as a goddess, who primarily stands for order, morality, balance, fairness, peace, truth, and justice. The absolute duty of Pharaoh is therefore to allow Mahat to reign in Egypt and to triumph. In contrast, Isafet aims to destroy Mahat, a tendency seen as natural in humans. Isafet causes chaos, disorder, corruption, and injustice, bringing evil to humans.
Okay, I get it. But how is that related to Egyptian society?
You must understand that it's through the Pharaoh, the divine incarnation of Horus, and king of Upper and Lower Egypt, that the gods of good attempt to make Mahat a reality for humanity. As a result, the king was firmly established as society's leader. But his role came with overwhelming duties and expectations from the population as a whole. He was expected to ensure Egypt's prosperity because of his role and divine nature, as you know. To illustrate this, if we go back to the origins of this divine status, some Egyptologists say prehistoric Egyptian kings were sometimes ritually sacrificed to the gods as soon as their supposed divine power weakened. Imagine doing that today. Some people I know wouldn't finish their term pleasantly. According to Egyptologist Cyril Aldred, these traditions later became rejuvenation ceremonies where the king was no longer sacrificed, but sometimes an animal or symbolic king, someone who agreed to be offered to the gods and joined them sooner than expected. As a result, when a pharaoh failed to fulfill a certain number of his duties, his legitimacy and even his divine nature could be called into question. You now see this role was more complex than expected. In medieval Europe, people spoke of the divine right to rule. The king, in this context, was by no means a god or an incarnation, but rather a man whom God had chosen and to whom he had given the right to rule. Like, okay bro, go for it, boss. I have no doubt that you understood this on your own. The duties imposed on and expected from these medieval kings were therefore quite different, that's for sure.
And so, what about the rest, the society, huh?
Well, that's when it gets more complicated than we like to think. The classic model presents, as we said earlier, society as a pyramid, as you can see on the screen. Still, it's a limited and incomplete view of Egyptian society. Although individuals' status in this society could change, it was primarily determined by their education level. An educated person could rise to high positions, while someone without education had fewer opportunities. I'll explain everything shortly, so don't panic, but first, we can see two groups in society, both obeying Pharaoh, educated and uneducated people. On one side are the educated people, and only the royal family members theoretically have hereditary status. For others, it's not that simple. This educated group includes the Chati, essentially the prime minister, though some mistakenly use that title. Vizier is an anachronistic term for ancient Egypt. Then come the high officials, some of whose positions were in fact hereditary, although this was by no means a right for them. This applied when the son or daughter had the right education and showed the required qualities. Next is the mass of this group, consisting of officials, priests, scribes, and various notables, whether judges, doctors, or others. These people form the state's structure and work more or less directly for it. Initially, these officials were scribes, or had education enabling them to read, write, and count. There are also uneducated people, most of whom are peasants or workers. Some are craftsmen or merchants. The latter often have rare skills or influence, so they are more highly regarded in society. Some in this group joined the army. It usually consisted of a permanent corps and mass conscription of peasants and workers when needed. The size of the professional army varied greatly between empires. The New Kingdom, the most militaristic era, had the most impressive professional army. Whether in terms of numbers or equipment, the professional army was an opportunity for uneducated people to rise in society. One could start as a soldier, become a standard bearer, then command a company, and later be assigned a position as head of the local police or even provincial police. These people had far more power and influence than an educated scribe, for example. You might be thinking he hasn't mentioned slaves. Don't worry, I'm getting there. In conclusion, another small and separate subgroup in ancient Egyptian society was prisoners of war. These people captured after military campaigns were enslaved. Although they were still considered human beings and not property, and therefore had rights, the Egyptians also tried to assimilate them. Nevertheless, they could buy back their freedom by fighting in the Pharaoh's army or achieve a higher standard of living through merit. And as a result...
So if I got it right, it's the slaves, correct?
Actually, no, because there simply weren't any slaves, strictly speaking, in ancient Egypt. We devoted an episode to this topic. Check it out using the link in the description. Returning to Pharaonic Egypt's society. It's a hierarchical society that strives for meritocracy, though this has its limits, because not everyone had the same access to state education, that is, the basic training of scribes. So this gives you an overview of the society of Pharaonic Egypt. It's obvious that there were many adaptations and evolutions over the centuries, or should I say, the millennia that this civilization experienced, without really upsetting this model. And that's for the simple and good reason that, overall, it suited people just fine. The goal was for everyone to achieve prosperity through Mahat, and society was organized for that. We're not discussing personal wealth, but rather the chance for a pleasant, fairly comfortable life in Egypt. A goal for which everyone had a role, a real contribution, and their place. Anyone who didn't help or cheated was seen as serving Izafet, a deviant, essentially. And when justice got involved, it had little pity for those who, through their actions or inactions, allowed Izafet to gain ground. Whether the person was a high-ranking official or a peasant, it theoretically made no difference. The punishments were the same for everyone. The Egyptians believed the intermediate period's turmoil showed Izafet had gained the upper hand. We have a lot to learn from the wisdom of ancient Egypt. Though their social model was imperfect, its functioning and founding ideals are especially interesting and instructive. The interesting thing about history in general is that it is, in a way, a great theoretical book of humankind, with its successes and failures, its dark gray and bright moments. All this, besides being fascinating, teaches us lessons about human behavior. With that, I'm joining Antoine on his channel for an episode to talk about the Tatib. See you in a bit.